This military Jeep was so light it wasn't designed for roads. It was designed for helicopters. It weighed almost half as much as a standard Willys, used an aluminum body, and featured engineering that looked like science fiction in the 1950s. And that's exactly what ended its career. It was called M422 Mighty Mite, the Mighty Mite. It was the first completely new Jeep developed for the U.S. military after World War II, and the only vehicle of its kind designed specifically for the United States Marine Corps. After World War II, the nature of warfare began to change. For the United States Marine Corps, this meant one thing. Future conflicts were no longer expected to be massive frontline breakthroughs, but fast deployments to coastlines, islands, jungles, and mountainous terrain. The problem was that standard Jeeps, like the Willys, had been designed for a different era. They were reliable but heavy, poorly suited for air transport, and incompatible with early helicopters that had very limited lifting capacity. What the Marines needed was something entirely different, an ultralight, compact vehicle designed from the ground up for airborne operations. Interestingly, the story of the Mighty Mite did not begin inside a major corporate design bureau. One of its key early visionaries was self-taught engineer Ben F. Gregory, who in the late 1940s was already working on the concept of an ultralight four-wheel drive vehicle. The first prototypes, known as the Marco MM100, were developed with the involvement of engineers connected to American Bantam, the same company that stood at the origins of the very first military Jeeps during World War II. In the early stages, engineers even experimented with air-cooled engines from the Porsche 356, but this was unacceptable to the U.S. military, which required all components to be domestically produced. At that point, the project was taken over by American Motors Corporation, marking its transition from an experimental idea to an official military program. American Motors Corporation did not attempt to adapt a civilian vehicle. The Mighty Mite was designed entirely from scratch, around one strict limitation: weight. Every element of the vehicle was evaluated through that lens: the frame, suspension, drivetrain, and even the placement of the brakes. The result was a vehicle weighing approximately 770 kilograms, about 700 pounds. For military hardware of the time, this was almost unheard of. That low weight made it possible to transport the vehicle using early helicopters, such as the Sikorsky H-19, or to operate it in environments where any heavier Jeep would become a logistical burden. At the heart of the Mighty Mite was a truly unusual engine by U.S. military standards, an aluminum, air-cooled V4 developed specifically for this vehicle. It produced around 52 to 55 horsepower. On paper, that may not sound impressive, but for such a lightweight platform, it was more than sufficient. Even more important was the overall engineering approach. The M422 featured fully independent suspension on all four wheels, limited slip differentials both front and rear, and brakes mounted directly on the differentials rather than in the wheels. This reduced unsprung mass and significantly improved traction and stability on rough terrain. Taken together, these solutions made the Mighty Mite one of the most technologically advanced light military vehicles of the late 1950s. The M422 Mighty Mite was never intended to replace a standard Jeep. It was a specialized vehicle designed for the U.S. Marine Corps, reconnaissance, fast raids, communications, and moving small units through difficult terrain. In that role, it proved to be highly effective. There were even optional kits that allowed the vehicle to cross water obstacles by keeping it afloat, and its compact size made it especially well suited for jungles and narrow trails. However, all of these advantages only worked within a very specific operational niche. Outside of that narrow use case, the Mighty Mite's benefits quickly began to fade. The problem with the Mighty Mite was not its design, it was timing. While the vehicle was being refined and prepared for production, military aviation made a major leap forward. New turbine-powered helicopters entered service, such as the Bell UH-1 Huey, which could easily lift much heavier and far simpler vehicles. At that point, The Mighty Mite's greatest advantage, its extremely low weight, was no longer critical. Its weaknesses, however, became impossible to ignore. A high unit cost, complex maintenance requirements, and a very narrow operational role. For more than $5,000 per vehicle, the military could instead acquire something far more versatile and affordable, such as the Willys M38A1. Between 1959 and 1962, fewer than 4,000 M422 Mighty Mite vehicles were produced, including the M422A1 variant. They served exclusively with the United States Marine Corps and never entered widespread use. The program was quietly discontinued, without announcements, and without being officially labeled a failure. Today, the Mighty Mite is a rare museum piece and a highly sought-after collector's vehicle. It left behind not a combat legend, but an engineering lesson. This is the story of an army willing to pursue something radically new, and of a machine that perfectly matched the demands of its moment, but could not keep pace with rapid technological progress. The M422 Mighty Mite was not too weak. It was simply too precise for a world that changed faster than it could be used. If you know of similar vehicles that disappeared because progress moved on, let us know. We'll be happy to explore them in future videos.